show if a hurricane come in. They can show insurance companies how many policies are in those counties or that zone, and what their potential losses are, and so it's really
visually, so it's easy to
very
digest.
Unique. So what I do primarily is sell the hurricane forecast to insurance companies right now, because they need the prediction to plan ahead, because believe it or not, insurance companies buy insurance. Because insurance companies, if they get hit by a big hurricane, they can't afford to pay for all the policy damage.
Right.
So they buy insurance to cover their insurance. So they need to go out and say, oh, gosh, we're going to have problems in this zone in New Jersey.
Well, it's not something they want to gamble on. They need as much data as they can get their hands on.
But I'd like to be able to get the forecast out to more entities, and this is the problem, trying to figure out how to do it, because it's a unique new product. I'm the only one in the world that's issuing zone forecasts for hurricanes 1 year in advance, and actually 4 years out in advance. Only one in the world doing it. So it's a new product, and we're trying to catch on.
You've got some bragging rights on the percentage of accuracy there.
Accuracy for when we say a zone would be a hot spot is about a 90% accuracy going back to 2006. We predicted, my hurricane model predicted Hurricane Irene 2 years in advance.
Wow.
Hurricane Sandy 2 years in advance.
Oh, my.
Sure. If someone's having a discussion with someone who is an adamant global warming
enthusiast,
zealot, we don't have to use the same word, what would be some of the points that you would make to counter that?
Right.
Okay, some people feel that man is the definite cause for global warming. And I'd like to counter by saying, well, global warming is real. There's no doubt about that. We've had global warming since 1930 to now. So, yeah, it's real. However, what about the global warming we had in the 1700s? We didn't have any automobiles.
Right.
We weren't burning fossil fuels, at least not very much. We didn't have big industrial plants. And then what about in the 1300s? We had a global warming event also. Wow.
Well, not to mention the 5 global ice ages that we're aware of.
That's right. So, but the thing is, the global warming cycles come every 200 to 220 years without the help of man. This is really God's natural cycles. He set it up where, one way I look at it is, we have a global warming cycle that comes every 220 years. On top of that, we have the interglacial warm period that comes every 116,000 years. That's when we're warmest. Right now, we're at the peak of the interglacial very warm period that comes every 116,000 years. We're actually peaked on it 7,000 years ago. That's when we're warmer. And, wow, we had 50% less ice in the Arctic than today. How did that happen? Man wasn't here. And, gee, it was warmer 1,000 years ago. How did that happen? We didn't have SUVs and big industrial plants. And why is it that carbon dioxide, when we have the peaks in the interglacial periods every 116,000 years, how is it that the carbon dioxide rises 600 to 800 years after the temperature increases? And why is it that carbon dioxide peaks 1,000 to 7,000 years after the peak of that warm period? It's not carbon dioxide causing temperatures to rise, it's vice versa. This has been inaccurate talk by the other side. It's proven science. Any journal, just Google it, any journal you can go to, it's proven science, but temperatures rise first and then carbon dioxide. And there's other methods of retrieval to look at historical data of carbon dioxide. It shows that during the past 1,200 years, during our global warming cycles that come every 200 years, carbon dioxide has increased and gotten up around 360 to 400 parts per million every 200 years, just like it did during the past 100 years. Matter of fact, in 1860, everyone would say, well, gee, carbon dioxide was at 260 parts per million. Instruments said that. That was our first instrument readings, 260 parts per million. Well, plant stomata at the same time said it was 260 parts per million. Well, the core samples said it was 260 parts per million. Everything did. Then, lo and behold, now we're 400 parts per million. Well, instruments say that, plant stomata says that, and ice says it. They're all in agreement. However, we didn't have instruments prior to 1860.
Right.
But in the 1700s, 1500s, 1300s, and around 1000 AD, plant stomata and Greenland ice core samples showed we were up around 400 parts per million. But no one wants to recognize it.
Right. Well, when you're looking at cycles that are on the high end, 100,000 years plus, and then cycles below that measured in hundreds of years and thousands of years, it's hard to look at a couple hundred years worth of data and come to a rock-solid conclusion about what the cause is.
Well, that's correct. You can't look at the past 100 years, which is one cycle, actually half of one cycle.
Half of one cycle, yeah.
And say that, well, that's what caused it. Carbon dioxide caused our temperatures to rise. Well, you have to look at, gee, we had the global warming cycles prior to that every 200 years.
It's supposed to be releasing carbon
so
dioxide.
it's supposed to be happening. Of course, people will say, yeah, but the carbon dioxide is higher than it's been, and that's going to cause the temperatures to rise higher. Well, you look at the other studies that I mentioned, the Greenland ice core and the plant stomata, carbon dioxide has been that high in the past, so you have to ignore that. That is totally untrue.
Right.
Carbon dioxide does not cause temperatures to rise. Carbon dioxide is a very minor trace greenhouse gas. Water vapor, 96% of the greenhouse gas. Man-made carbon dioxide from the release of carbon dioxide from fossil fuel burning is about 0.5% of the carbon dioxide in the air. It's not even close to being a problem. And the plants love it. The earth loves it.
Right. Well, the human condition loves it too. I mean, by nature, people want to live where it's warmer. They did back, you mentioned 1,300 years ago when there was a different climate condition on the earth and it was warmer.
Oh, it was. Well, actually, you look back when the dinosaurs roamed back 40, 60, 80 million years ago, carbon dioxide was 1,600 parts per million.
Was it really?
And right now we're complaining about 400 parts per million.
Right.
Well, because we had high carbon dioxide at 1,600 parts per million, oxygen levels were at 31%. We're
So
now
different kind of volcanic conditions and different kind of planetary
well, the carbon
conditions.
dioxide, remember, the plants were big and enormous back then. They absorbed the carbon dioxide and produced a lot of oxygen. Now, the plants are smaller, less carbon dioxide for the plants, and our oxygen has fallen from 31% down to 20 to 21%.
Really?
We're almost oxygen starved
Really?
because of the lack of carbon dioxide.
Oh, boy.
And when you look at greenhouses, which is sort of like our atmosphere, except a little bit more controlled, they like to keep the carbon dioxide around 500 parts per million to grow certain plants, and up to 1,000 parts per million for certain flowers. So a 500 to 1,000 parts per million range. And we're complaining about 400 parts
You're
per
right
million.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. Where can we learn more about you? What is your website?
Okay, my website, globalweathercycles.com. That is globalweathercycles.com. And if you go on the website, I have one section in there on the far right on the menu, which is speakers and climate. Go on there and see what I talk about, and I'm available for speaking engagements.
And your ebook is also on your website.
The ebook is on there. It's called Earth's Natural Climate Pulse, and I put it on there free of charge.
And your email address is davidgwo@aol.com.
Yes.
This has been so informative. David Dilley from Global Weather Oscillations. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, David.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And please remember to mind your own business.
And we certainly hope the government minds their own business.
Perfect.
Can you believe the amount of info we were given today?
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I felt it very important to get David on the show so that we could get this information out there because it's not found many places, if anywhere.
No, in the discussion about how all these things on our planet are interconnected. It's not just climate and clouds and cooling or warming. All these things are connected.
You're absolutely right. Well, I want you to go home and enjoy your Sunday, Tom.
I certainly will.
But you got to come back next Sunday at 11.
To mind your own business.
That's right.